Welcome back to part 2 of Show Hide Patrick, and we're going to get started with some JavaScript. So now's when the fun begins, and we're going to make a function that hides Patrick. We'll do that first, and then we can make a function that shows Patrick. It doesn't matter which one you do first, because you can click on either button. But what we're going to do here for the JavaScript is we're going to use a keyword called function. Just like in Python, we use def. Here we're going to use function. And I'm going to use function, and then you give it a function name. And something simple, let's start with showPat, and we'll do it like that, and then we'll put parentheses. We have to put open and closing parentheses. There's not going to be anything in here. We'll do showPat. Now, in Python, we would do that. We're not doing that here. What we're doing here in JavaScript is we're putting curly braces, just like we do with CSS. We're going to do curly braces, and everything will go inside here. The whole function will go inside here, so it doesn't care about indents like the way Python does. It cares about the curly braces, and it also wants semicolons. So it's almost a little bit like CSS in a way. Some of the syntax is a little bit like CSS, so I'll kind of put it that way. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do something called document. Now you could start typing things, document, and then I'm going to put dot, and I'm going to start typing get. See, you don't have to type a lot of this. You can just start typing it, and it says get element by ID. And now we're going to use that because we have an ID. So we'll click on that, and in parentheses we have to put the ID name, and we have to put it in quotes. So what is the ID of this guy? Correct, pick. So in quotes you want to put pick lowercase. Don't put a capital P. Put exactly how you named the ID here. You want to put exactly what you did there. So that's pick is what you're going to change, and then it's also, here's the ID name here. So you're going to change that. And what we're going to change, we're going to do something, we have to put, because it's CSS, we have to put dot. Notice it's using this dot syntax. It's using dot get element by ID, and this has to be like this, with the capital B, capital I, that's called camel case. Sometimes we'll make functions with camel case, but I thought it was easier just to make the function all lowercase. But that's camel case right there, so all that stuff matters. If you have a small e in there, it's not going to work. And you'll show me your code, and I'll be like, that you got a small e in there. So make sure it's a capital E, and make sure you use this kind of stuff here. And don't double it up though. And so I'm going to use style dot opacity. So style refers to CSS and opacity refers to the property. And we're just going to put equals. When we want to show Pat, we're going to put the opacity to 1. And then we're going to put a semicolon. And I think we could do a 1 just like that. I don't think we need quotes. So we're going to do that. Now, nothing's happening yet because we didn't call the function. Let's try it out. Let's try it out, then we can copy this. So let's make sure we could show Patrick and make him 100%. So here's the function definition. This is the function definition. So it's not running yet. It's not calling the function. Just like in Python, we had to do something. We had to do it like this. We had to say show Pat and do parentheses. And actually, look at that. It worked. It's actually calling the function right now, except we don't want to call the function immediately. We actually want to call the function. I'm going to cut this out of here, but I did type it. And where we're going to put this is we're going to go inside the button for show Patrick. We got to go to the show Patrick button and put a space. And before you paste it, you want to put on click, and you can type on click, and that's going to be a attribute of HTML. And I'll put equals, and I'll put quotes, double quotes, because it has to go inside the quotes. Even though it's a function call, it has to go in the quotes. And then you put your function call, you paste your function call inside here. So this will say button on click equals. That'll be basically an attribute of the button that there's going to be an on click event, and it's going to call the show Pat function on that button, and it'll call that function. And what it should do, it should make Patrick 100%. That's exactly what it did. And you should know enough now to know how to make him transparent. You would actually just have to go here. In my JavaScript, I'll move this up. Now this will be really simple. You can just copy this function and paste it. I'll put an extra space in there. And we'll change the name of it. Don't forget to change the name. We'll call this hide Pat. And it's going to do the same thing. It's going to say document.getElementById by ID, pick, style opacity, except when you hide Pat, it's going to make him 0. It's going to take his opacity to 0. Now one thing I'm also going to do is go back here and change this to 0. So he starts at 0, because I trust that things are working now. So I'll put it back to 0, so that's working okay. So I didn't have any problem seeing my image. That's the only reason I would do that. So I have the function definition to hide pat, but I do not have the function call. So what you can do is you can copy this inside here, go right up like to the end, copy that, and put it inside the other button, right here. And keep in mind, you do need a space here. You can't have button on click. It won't know the difference between button and on click. It won't see the break. So you got to make sure you have a break there. And this will say on click equals show pat. And then make sure, remember, this function is calling hide pat. So you have to make sure that you go down here, that you go in here and you change that to hide pat. And it has to be exactly as it is. Don't misspell it. If you did what I was doing, if you put an extra P in there, it's not going to work. So make sure that this says exactly the name of the function that you have there. If you're not sure, copy it and paste it here. But I'm trying to keep them as simple as possible. Show pat, hide pat. So I'm not putting any capital letters in there or anything like that. So that should be okay. So now, show Patrick, hide Patrick. Show Patrick, hide Patrick. So that's working. And we're going to make this change so that when it first starts, it's going to say, where's Patrick? And then when we show Patrick, this is going to change to here's Patrick. Well, how do we do that? Well, that's pretty easy. Now, remember, when we show Patrick, it's going to change to here's Patrick. So that's a hint. So this is the show pat. What do we want to have change? I'll type document, and then you could click on document, and then I'll type period, and then I'll start typing get, and I'll click on dot get element by ID, and then I'll put parentheses, and I'll put quotes right away. And then inside the quote, the ID that I want to change, I don't want to change Patrick with pick. I want to change this line. And this line is where? And this goes back. You remember this? Remember we made an ID up here called MSG? We're going to use MSG. That's what we're going to change. So go right here and put MSG in there. And don't do this. I've seen people do this. Don't type message there and then wonder why it doesn't work. It's like if you're targeting MSG, you have to put MSG here. So make sure you're consistent. Those are the little mistakes that people make, and it frustrates people, and it's really simple stuff. So that has to be MSG, that has to be MSG. Pick has to be the same as pick wherever that is in the image. So now we're doing this. Now we're not changing the style. What we're changing is something called inner HTML. And let me see if this comes up. Dot inner, that's not coming up. But that's the way we have to type it. We're going to put dot inner HTML and then equals, and we're just going to put what it's going to say. So in quotes, it's going to say, here's Patrick. And we're going to put an exclamation point, because before we had a question mark. That's all that's going to happen. Now that's built into the function definition, so you don't have to do anything else. The button's already doing that. We're changing the original function definition. So when you do this, that'll change that already. See, now it's changing two things. It's changing Patrick's opacity, and it's changing the message that's showing up here in this ID, which happens to be message. Now, just as easy if you want to flip the other one around, you just copy this whole thing and go here, because it's not going to go back the way it was. Nothing will send it back the way you originally had it, so you have to do that. So once you change it, you have to make it go back. That's why it won't just go back. So I'm going to go back here and just put in where's Patrick and put a question mark again. Even though that's what it said initially, we want to make sure that when we hit the button, it's going to do that. So when we show Pat, it's going to show Pat and say, here's Patrick. And when we hide Pat, it's going to hide Pat and say, where's Patrick? So that's it. And the only other thing we can do here, just to wrap this up, is just to, if you want to learn how to use a Google font, a web font, so you're not stuck with whatever anybody has on their computer, using Arial and stuff like that all the time, we can go find a nice font. And if you remember from the video editing and things like that, we've worked with web fonts before, but we've never seen how to use them. So what we're going to do is we're going to use them, and this is going to go into the CSS. So this is a CSS part here, so I'm going to save this. So we're actually done with the JavaScript. So if that's your first JavaScript, congratulations. Now we're going to go in here, and we're going to change the H1. We have a color, and we have a size, and we're just going to change the font. Now, where you can do that, if you go to Assets, they have fonts. Now, they changed this a little. These don't even look interesting looking at them, so I'm not going to use any of them from what I see here. So what I'm just going to do, I clicked out of there, is I'm going to go right here I'm going to go to Google Fonts. And it'll open up Google Fonts in a separate tab. And now you can find anything you want. And one of the ones I'm going to use is called, not Roboto, it's called Roboto Slab. So I could even type it here. And you can search anything. You don't have to use Roboto Slab. I just like that. And that's what I used on my sample. So I'm going to search Roboto Slab. And here it is. And I'm going to click on it. And it should show you a whole bunch of styles. Now I'm going to use the heaviest one they have. Maybe extra bold 800 or black 900. I'll use this one. I didn't use this one before. And if you click on select this style, it'll bring out this little window here, and this is all you need. Now you have to put this back into CodePen to use it. And I recommend doing this because this is too much code here. So if you use the import, you'll see style tags here, and it starts with like import. What you want to do is highlight everything from here through the semicolon and put that in your CSS. You don't want the style tags because that's actually meant to go in HTML. But you can put this right in your CSS. This part right here, that at import. Just copy it from there, Control-C or Command-C. Go back to here, and you can get out of here. You don't need this. And where that goes, it doesn't go in H1. It actually will go before body. You're actually going to hit enter here and just paste it here because that's going to kind of tell you that your CSS is importing a font in here. And it actually shows the font in here, except we're not applying the font yet. It's just, this is kind of loading it up so it's available. That's all that this import URL does. It's making the font available, and I'll even hit another return there. So it's available, but I'm not using it. I'm not telling anywhere to use it. So to tell it to use it, if I go back to Google Fonts, and I could type this in myself, this isn't a big deal, but I could go down here and highlight this font family, and we've used this before, and they always use single quotes around their fonts, which is fine. And I'm just going to copy that, Control-C or Command-C, and then under H1, I'll go here and just put it there, and there it is. There's my Roboto Slab. So you can go look up different fonts. You can go up look up. I'll X out of here, and I'll just go back to Google Fonts to get back to the beginning. So make sure you take that search off, and then I'll just go here and I'll look at display fonts. So if you wanted something cool like Ranchers or something like that, you could use that. You can click here and use Ranchers, and say select this style if you like Ranchers. Now, your style, you're thinking, well, where'd that stuff go that I copied? It's actually up here. And this seems to change a little bit every time. Now, here's the nice thing. If you're like, well, I might want to use Ranchers, but I'm not sure. If you copy this again, it actually has Roboto Slab and Ranchers in there. So if you copy this whole at import, it'll give you access to both. So if you think you might want to use the other, or if you're not sure, just copy it, and you have both still selected here. So I could go here and just replace this line up here, and it'll basically activate both fonts if I want to use. Now it's still using Roboto Slab, but if I wanted to go here and type in, let's see what it says, Ranchers, it's all one word, Ranchers with a capital R. If I wanted to go here and just change this to be Ranchers, there it is. That's pretty cool. It's a little jammed together, but that looks kind of cartoony. Or I could use Ranchers there or something like that. You know, whatever you want. And it seems like Google Fonts always use a little quote in there. I don't know if it matters if you don't. I'm just curious. That seems to work without the quotes, but they always have quotes in there. I don't know if that's something. I like leaving them in because that kind of is like an indicator to me that you're using a Google web font when you see those single quotes. But anyway, I think that's it. I think we're done with this after doing that. So again, show Patrick, hide Patrick. We're changing the text, and we're changing the image, and that's about it. There's obviously other things you could do here. You can make buttons hide and show. So if you just wanted one button, if you wanted to make it look like the show button is changing and all that, there's all kinds of things you could do. But this is our little introduction to JavaScript. It's fairly simple. So we're going to save this once you're done. And to share it, you could go down to share and just use copy link. And then go back to my Warren, which of course has got logged out already. And then just go to coursework. And for fall 2020, this is still under unit 13, even though it's almost the start of a new week, but it's a short assignment. We'll go here, click on this link, add a comment, add a link, paste in your link. Make sure you change this to new window, hit OK, hit save, and you're done. You're done with exercise 17, show hide Patrick using JavaScript.